Aloha. Thank you all for joining me. And I'm so excited to be interviewing one of my favorite masters track and field athletes today. And I've been doing a series called Pieces of the Puzzle, where I ask my athletes what are the pieces of the puzzle that have made them successful. And in addition to asking Brad these things, or basically we're going to talk about it anyway, I really wanted Brad on today to talk about his new book that he co-wrote, and that is called Born to Walk. And boy, did this book resonate with me, like 110%. There it is, Born to Walk. Sorry, I don't have my copy up here. I've had crazy technical difficulties this morning. We won't get into it, but so yes, Born to Walk. Brad, thank you for writing this book.
Well,
So
Cynthia, you're welcome. And if we had more space on the cover, I just showed the cover for those watching on YouTube, we would have called it Born to Walk and Sprint, because that is truly the human genetic expectation for health. And it's really forgotten. So I know we're going to get into the sprint topic, of course, with both of us eager and the listeners eager too. But we'll get into the major premise here, which is that in between stuff that you write beautiful content and talk about so much is not really good for your health. And it's time to re-educate the population, especially the fitness-minded people that heading out the door and shuffling along for however many miles on the run or miles per week can very likely be destructive to your health. And even when you get fit and you're a cardio freak and you can get your finisher medals, it's still a tiny little pie slice of the big picture for what it means to be healthy. So it's a little bit of a controversial message. Mark Sisson and I have the right to throw down because we're both old time, beat up endurance athletes looking back decades later thinking, what the heck was I doing? I think I told you about my PTSD experience in Kailua Kona,
yes.
Hawaii.
Well, yeah,
This
and
was
just for my
now
listeners, will you tell, I mean, you're such a legend in the endurance world. Will you tell my listeners just a couple of your accolades that you did accomplish as an endurance athlete back when you were, destroying your body?
Well said. That's right. So, when I was a kid, I loved all the sports, and I thought I was so good at football and basketball that I was going to be a star on the high school team. And then I went to this huge Los Angeles public high school where we were city champions in basketball, and I was also a good golfer, but we were state champions in golf. And so the kids that are small and not quite suited for playing point guard or starting quarterback, they end up going over to the cross country and long distance running track teams. And I had great success when I was a kid. I made it to National Junior Olympics finals in the 1500. I was ranked 12th in the country at age 16. I
Amazing.
made it to the state finals of California in the mile, which is really tough. And then I got to college and kept getting sick and injured over and over with Division One ridiculous program at UC Santa Barbara. And that's what led me to this wonderful sport of triathlon where I didn't have to get injured all the time because I could balance the training load. And that led to a 9 year career on the pro circuit, which was really a dream come true because, I dreamed of being an athlete since I was a little kid. And now I was out there dedicating my entire life every single day to eating, sleeping, training, and doing a lot of traveling all over the globe and competing against the top guys. And it was a really great experience. But when we talk about the overall impact of it, like with your tee up question, it was extremely destructive to my general health and well-being, and certainly longevity. And I contend, we're all excited about these biological age scores you can get now and your telomeres and all that. I think from ages 20 to 30, when I was on the pro circuit, I aged 15 to 20 years, literally speaking, biological age. And when I finished at 30, I was so beat up and washed up and worn out. I did feel like an old man, and I'd wake up every morning and
Mm.
shuffle down the hall with one foot pointed out at 45 degrees and one foot straight, and everything was, just achy and tired. And that's what happens when you try to compete at the highest level. And that's okay because my goal in life was to go from 1 hour 47 to 1 hour 46:12 and win the race instead of come seventh. And so you have to try for those
Yeah.
marginal improvements
Yeah.
and put everything into it. But it does come at a cost. And then, when I'm finished racing and looking at the rest of my life, I was like, now what am I going to do to be a healthy, fit person? Because I'm not going to go crazy anymore. And so, not to get off track, but I did turn my attention to dominating little kids in soccer, basketball, and track for around the next decade, from when my son was 5 to around 15. I was the MVP on every one of the teams I coached, and I would play really, really hard. I learned this from another dad that had older kids, and I saw him beating up on his poor little kids on the basketball court. And I'm like, Dennis, what are you doing? These guys are about to cry. He goes, oh no, you got to bring the heat every time because you
I was
got to teach your kid that competitive spirit. I'm like, good point, good point. So I would just throw down on these poor kids and dribble through the whole pack and
Mhm.
score a layup. But it really demanded full body functional fitness. So that was my transition away
Mhm.
from being an endurance freak. And now in recent years, of course, I became obsessed with masters track and field about 5 years ago when I jumped into a meet out of nowhere. I cleared 5 feet in the high jump, which turned out to be pretty good for the 55-year-olds. I'm like, I couldn't believe that because in high school I couldn't even make the team. But now with the war of attrition and keeping healthy and fit, now I'm completely transformed from endurance freak to power, explosive strength, speed,
Mhm.
competing at my favorite events of 400 meters and high jump.
That's awesome. That's awesome. There's so much to get into in that recap of your achievements, and I love it. Um, one thing I wanted to touch on just really briefly that you were mentioning in passing is teaching the kids the life lessons of beating up on them. So we have friends. My husband and I, of course, we're coaches. My husband's a wrestling coach, and we have friends that, long story short, one of our friends' sons is one of my jujitsu clients, and he's actually thriving in the Las Vegas scene right now, and doing really well. And the joke is that his dad never let him win, and that's why he's so hungry for for the victory. And I just this is totally off our subject, but how did you feel that worked for the kids? Did you feel like that did teach them
Yeah, I'm glad you let
that
me.
like letting them
Uh,
win sometimes or being a little soft or like I mean, what was your
oh
perspective
yeah.
on that as a parent
Um,
too
I
for
think
other?
it goes hand in hand with today's trend and the criticism of like every kid gets a trophy, every kid gets celebrated. The parents are just, hovering over their kids and everything's wonderful and we don't want them to struggle or fail. And I do see that phenomenon happening. So I like to have the kids face reality as soon as possible. And what was great about, my son got into high level basketball, so he went from the community league where he was scoring all the points to like, oh, okay, now Mr. Hot Shit, let's see how you do against fifth graders that happen to be 1 foot taller than you somehow. And
Yeah.
so he got to learn how to be, a star player and excel, and he also got to learn how to get his butt kicked. And I think for me, back to triathlon, that was the most valuable and incredible, profound lesson that I learned and took with me every day for the rest of my life and everything I do. So, at my best, Cynthia, I had great success out there. I was two-time U.S. national champion. I was ranked number 3 in the world at the end of my best season. I had a winning streak where I was just on top and like nothing could go wrong. And then I got my butt kicked so many times with such tremendous, you know, amplification of the consequences. Like I thought everything was, life or death because there's so much pressure on a professional
Mhm.
athlete. And I had to recalibrate so many times that finally I realized, I need to get over myself and realize that the value and the beauty is in the process of being an athlete. It's not whether I become first place champion or get my butt kicked in 24th
Mhm.
place. It's all part of the flow of life. And, today I look
Yeah.
back and the race results don't mean that much anymore, but they meant everything at the time, which was the beauty of it. And so I guess answering your question back with the kids, oh yeah, the way the story ends is like around age 15. I was blown off the court by these kids when they started to get to JV basketball level in high school. And my son, one time politely, we were driving back from Sunday night pickup game where I'd always play in the 3-on-3 rotations. And he said, "Hey, Dad, you don't have to drive me to Sunday night pickup game anymore. I can get a ride from Josh's dad." And I go, "Oh, no, I love driving. I love playing every Sunday night." He goes, "You don't have to play in the 3-on-3 anymore." And what he meant was like I couldn't hold my own. Where
He didn't
the
want you to play.
previous year, I was MVP of the middle school team easily, and I'd kick all their butt in the
Uh,
suicide lines at the end of practice. And now I was blown off the court because,
yeah.
there comes a time when the parent needs to go sit in the stands and clap, and that was my time. That's when I turned my attention over to high jump and 400 meters.
Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting that that was your transition point. And I love that story though. It sounds like you're a great parent and you were really there for your child and then knew, when to take that other supportive role as well. Which I did the same thing with my daughter with running with her for so many years and then being, the coach and then kind of, just the parent, which is, something totally different. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's really great. So it was really a success story, it sounds like. And it's not to say that we're not compassionate to our children and understand if they're going through something or, they do need comfort, but there is a lesson to be learned in losing. And even in wrestling, my husband says that he loves when the kids on his team lose in preseason because he wants them to win at state championship. But he said if they lose in preseason, they become better wrestlers. Like the data is there. He's been doing this for
Mm.
25 years, coaching and, many, many accolades. I could go on and on about his athletes just, winning national awards and all kinds of stuff. But, he does love them to lose in preseason. And I guess there is value in losing. And I think sometimes parents lose sight of that because they just want to, our nature is to take care, especially women, to take care of our children. But I love
Mm.
us, and that's totally not quite on our topic, but part of our stories, both of us. I actually lost, let's see, my first world championship meet, I got a bronze medal in the 400, and I had trained so hard for it. I wanted to throw it in the trash, boy. I did not even want that bronze medal. And what happened was I had not been taking supplements and all that stuff yet.
Mm.
And I got a stomach bug from some contaminated lettuce. And so when you travel to other countries, I now learned the valuable lesson that, if you overflood your system with like probiotics and prebiotic fiber, you're not going to get that weird bacteria because it could even be an innocuous bacteria,
Mm.
but we're just, our system's not used to it, right? So I had the worst diarrhea for like 3 days. I did well in my trials and then well in my semis, and I got it right after my semis. So
Mm.
then I had a day rest and then I had my finals. So I didn't even know if I could make it to the starting line. And I barely did, basically, because Charles, my mentor, he was traveling during that interim day, but then he saw, my message, got back to me, said, got to take some activated charcoal, this many. It was like the whole bottle, basically, is crazy overnight. And that's how I was able to make it to my race and still come in for a bronze medal. But I told the lady who won, hey, listen, I only won because I'm sick. And she's like, yeah, 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 And then I came back 6 months later and I became world champion. So, but that lesson in losing taught me, okay, how do I fix this for the next,
Mm.
race? And that was, I needed to keep on top of my supplements and take my fiber and all that stuff. And then now I'm able to help other athletes fix their race day with the same advice. So I have an Olympian right now who's over in Doha, and she's Sandy Morris. She's competing in pole vault this weekend,
Mm.
and I have a travel checklist for her. So because of me losing, I'm able to help others, and I was able to help myself. But yeah, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned with losing. But really, what I want to talk about is what are the lessons to be learned from this crazy running boom that we've had where people think that when they turn 40, they should run a marathon. Like what I tell women all the time, they go, oh, I'm turning 40. My goal is to run a marathon. And I go, really? Well, your goal, if you really care about your health as you're aging and you're turning 40 and longevity, should not be to run a marathon because that actually could be detrimental to your health. But really, you should train for a 100-meter sprint. And they go, what? How is there even a 100-meter sprint available? And I say, of course, they're available all year round, or basically, indoors at 60 meters. But I think probably you could find a 100-meter race nearly every month of the year because some of the warm states still have outdoor 100-meter races. And so, or, 60 to 100, we'll say. You can train for that sprint and compete in it all year round if you wanted to. But what I'm saying is it's not only available, but it's abundant. So I think people don't think that they're able to do that or they think it's hard. What do you think are the can you tell us, first of all, you dive into the history in your book about the running boom.
Hmm.
Can you tell us about why people have that mindset of I need to run a marathon as a goal? And also, um, like why do they think that sprinting is not possible for them? One of the favorite parts of my book of your book is you said, or Mark, one of you said in one line, you can go out and sprint full max effort, and yeah, there are nuances to that where you have to prepare, but it's you're not saying you can't do it. And recently, again, I know it's like a three-part question, but recently, Andrew Huberman had a guest on who's the sprint expert. Don't even get me started. I'll keep my mouth shut on that one. But and he said, you can't sprint to Andrew. You're not able to sprint. You can't sprint. People can't sprint. And he was there supposedly promoting sprinting, but he was saying that no one can sprint because they are unable to do it properly. And I'm like, wow, that is a daunting thing. And you know what? Andrew loves to sprint and he loves to go and give his best. Is he giving exactly elite runner maximal 100% effort? Maybe not, but it doesn't mean he's not going above 95% and trying some intervals. I don't like that negativity where you say you can't sprint. And I love that your book said anyone can sprint. So can you, one, talk about the running boom, why we have that mindset? Two, why do people think they should do a marathon? And three, why do they think it's hard to sprint? One, two, three, go.
Yeah, I have to write down all the questions that came through. And then speaking of accessible, I was thinking of our friend, our carnivore friend, Dr. Sean Baker, who's
Mhm.
got his app and he does social media posts where he's timing his own sprint. I don't know what app he's using, but it's pretty cool. He's like, my time today was 6.2 seconds in the 40 or whatever. So it's totally accessible for almost everyone because the term sprint we can broaden the definition to mean that it's, giving a near maximum intensity, very short duration, explosive effort. And so definitely novices might want to start on low or no impact options, such as sprinting on the stationary bike or the stair machine or other cardio, the rowing machine, or even up the stadium stairs if you go to practice and take your kid to their track and field sprint practice, you can do low impact things with very low injury risk. But I think to answer your question, the lack of interest and accessibility is probably people who aren't well adapted enough to push the body hard, especially as you look into the older age groups and the senior citizens and the most health conscious senior citizens are out there walking every day.
Mhm.
My mom gets great credit for that. She puts in a lot of steps. And then I'm
How
like,
old is your
hey,
mom?
when she's 88 and she's in
That's
fantastic
awesome.
shape. She's got aches and pains and arthritis,
Mhm.
and I'm trying to encourage her to spend more time in the gym in addition to that time where you're out there putting one foot in front of the other. Because if you just do cardio aerobic endurance activity, what happens, and any runner can nod their head who's listening, is over time you go slower and slower and you shuffle more and more and you lose this full body functional fitness because all you're doing is shuffling in a straight line at a slower and slower pace with more and more injury risk just from routine, pounding the pavement at a 12-minute mile even. So
Yeah,
we
there
have this.
hearing statistic in your book that said it was something like between 35, no, between 47 and 75%, something around there, injury, with like most of
Oh,
them,
it's
some of the
crazy.
research was like
Yeah.
56%, but definitely close to or over half of endurance runners, meaning people who are trying to do anything longer than a mile, essentially, getting injured. And it's not if, it's when for the overuse injury. And
Yeah.
you also talk about, you guys also talk about all of the, problems with, the running shoes and the shuffling and using the roads and not, long time ago, cross country was cross country on the trails and the grass, which is way more forgiving than the pavement. So we have, Sally turning 40 who's saying, I'm going to run a marathon for my goal. And she's shuffling along the pavement in these, overly cushioned shoes. But like, why do we have that mindset, do you think? Was it sold to us over the years? Or like, why do we have that mindset? Or not we, but, people in general, the population.
Well, it's exactly as you say or propose. It's cultural programming and billions of dollars of marketing money spent
From,
to
from
lure the person into
who's
this
selling
sport of
this?
endurance running. It's the running shoe industry is huge, and also the event production industry is huge. From being on the Big Island, the economy is transformed every year for a week when the Ironman comes to town, and it's millions of dollars of economic impact. And so
Yeah.
these major marathons, like they just set a record in London. The biggest finisher was 54,000 runners or something. New York City had 52,000 last year. So this is like a major cultural happening. And
And they're paying several $100s for an entry fee and making it exclusive, even though it's not really that exclusive because, as you guys point out in your book years ago, the times were incredibly faster. And now they just keep getting slower and slower. So the average time, the very average time for one of these large marathons, you guys point out, would have been like, last place back then or something like that. It's just
yeah,
crazy. The statistics, you guys got
yeah.
to get the book and read it, whoever's listening. It's so many great statistics and stories. But yeah, so they're making a lot of money. I do have a friend who has a running production company, and he also in Maui, and he also puts on races for, like, say a corporation comes to the Ritz-Carlton, he'll put on a 5K for them, and so they make a lot of money for sure. So I do see that where, yes, definitely the running shoe industry, I can see that, and these production companies. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and we should also say, the good aspects of the fitness boom. It's not just the running boom, but at the same time in the 70s, Jane Fonda got going with her exercise tapes. And so a segment of the population, it actually is a small segment, but people who got off the couch and wanted to do something solid for their body, this is a great thing. It's better to be in a running group than the bowling league with the smoky bowling alley and the beers and the potato chips. It's just an argument to do it in the correct manner so it doesn't
Yeah.
destroy your health. And I think
But what
the
what do you
worst kept
correct
secrets.
the correct manner is? You mentioned it before, but
Oh, it's pretty
here's
simple,
the
Cynthia.
correct ma-
Here,
I already know because it's also my opinion about the correct manner. But what is your opinion of, like, you know the correct manner of that? You're
well,
balancing the exercise, because yes, we do want people to get up and off the couch.
yeah.
Absolutely, we're
I
not saying
mean,
like don't do any exercise or that sort of thing. But your book is called Born to Walk, so that's a big clue right there.
here's the thing. It's very simple, and it comes down to the the musculoskeletal and the metabolic impact of the activity. Running is a very, very difficult act for the human to actually run instead of be walking and going at a slower pace. And so, if you're fit enough to take off down the road or trail and exhibit a jogging, a running gait, and your heart rate is in the correct zone, which is at or below fat max heart rate. That's a comfortable pace that emphasizes fat burning, is not too strenuous or stressful or prompting extreme glucose burning in favor of predominantly fat burning. So if you're able to jog, it's a
If people are
wonderful activity
like
for,
that, like a zone one type thing.
well, everyone's
That's
talking about
not
zone
really,
two this, zone two
yeah.
that,
Zone
and it's
two
so
is fine,
important.
though, right?
What's that?
Zone two is not really. I find it's not that effective, but it's zone one ish, right? You're
Um,
little
yeah,
step down from zone two.
Yeah, for those not familiar with, we know today, for some reason, we now identify the exercise zones 1 through 5, and zone 5 would be maximum sprinting, and zone 4 would be a really intense, uh, you know, racing for 2 miles or a 5K. And then zone 2 is the term for the fat burning zone, where the top of zone two before going into zone three is when you're burning maximum fat calories per minute. So inside zone two, you feel pretty comfortable. You can generally carry on a pretty decent conversation without getting winded. And then zone one would be easy, casual pace, like a slow, medium, or brisk walk. Zone two is getting a lot of credit these days, and zone one is kind of getting left behind. So I want to also tout the benefits of just going out and doing basic, general, everyday movement that's not strenuous, but
Hmm.
gets your body out the door and moving. And walking, of course, would be the centerpiece, but we're also talking about very easy pedaling your bicycle down to the farmer's market, or
Hmm.
doing a yoga class, Pilates, Tai Chi. Foam rolling counts as movement, right? Because you're
Yeah.
moving the blood flow and all that. And so we have a critical obligation as humans to engage in more general everyday movement. And then we have this other huge void that's really important, which is to work that top end with um, high intensity strength training and brief explosive all-out efforts that we can call sprinting. And so
Hmm.
what I just described, most people who are fitness enthusiasts these days are doing very poorly on all three of those, and then they are stacking up in the kind of difficult, medium to difficult heart rate, steady state cardio, which has all these risks of overdoing it and ruining your metabolic and musculoskeletal health. And so we're not sprinting, we're not strength training much, we're not going slow enough to actually just get a rejuvenative, energizing exercise outing. And instead, we're pushing ourselves with these artificial goals, such as the marathon itself, or the Ironman, or these extreme events that have been glorified by marketing hype.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I think absolutely those three things, staying in that casual pace for walking, and then strength training. I like to tell my clients 3 times a week, but Charles used to say that you get something like 40% more outcome if you add in one more day, four times a week. So there is
Yeah.
that 3 to 4, but if you can only manage three, then three. And then like a three total body, or like four would be splitting up or lower, 2 days up or 2 days lower to give your nervous system time to rest. And then, sprinting, I know you guys talk about 1 day a week. Mark Sisson talks about 1 day a week, but, I find that if you vary your sprint interval training, the 3 day a week works really well. And that would be, to concentrate on some volume sprint intervals 1 day, totally short, uh, very short sprint intervals with max rest another day, and some sort of combination of the two for day three. I find this formula transforms bodies, transforms hormones, all kinds of things. But the walking is a great aspect as well. My dad is 82 years old and just competed in the world championships in the 200 meters.
Saw the video. Awesome.
So inspirational, like your mom, very inspirational. He's just amazing with his motivation. And so his workouts, of course, I was his coach. First of all, he loves lifting dumbbells, and he was able to lift, he got up to 30 pounds of weight in one dumbbell with a shoulder press, for instance. So he was looking pretty strong and doing pretty strong lifts there. And then he asked me for lower body lifts. And so I gave him ones to prepare him specifically for sprinting. And, his max effort, I think the other thing that people are missing is that your max effort doesn't have to look like, Noah Lyles. Your max effort is going to be different. So for, his max effort is way slower than my max effort because of his age and his body type and that sort of thing. It doesn't mean he's not giving a max effort, or we'll say max, 95% effort or 90% effort. So it looks different for everyone. And I think when people compare themselves to other sprinters, they think, oh, I'm not sprinting, or
Mm.
that's, but sprint interval training, again, like we just said, can mean different things. It can be volume type. It can be, the rest periods can differ a little bit, as long as you're going, I think, above 85%, and 95% for an actual sprint. But so back to my dad, he prepared really well. But one of the things he did that I'm getting at is that he walked, one of his days is walk and then sprint and then walk and then
Mm.
sprint. And that was actually really easy for him around the neighborhood. Another thing he did was his driveway is a hill. So he would do some hill sprints on the driveway, which again lessens your injury risk. It's the number one thing that I recommend people start with is walking up the hill. And that's what he did. He walked up the driveway first, and then I allowed him to start jogging. And then one day he called me and he said, "Oh, I just kept going up and down. I kept running down too." And I said, "No, that's not what I told you to do. You're supposed to rest in between. And also, that's not good for your knees to run down the hill, though." So he got a little too eager, but we switched it again. But he would walk around the neighborhood and then he would pick a point to sprint to, and he would sprint to that point. And then sometimes it got longer and longer as he got more fit. So I think that's probably something. What do you think about combining the two, like walking and then doing like a little bit of sprinting in your walk?
Yeah, this a beautiful idea, and it just takes a re-education of the population because somehow we've been brainwashed to think that steady state cardio is the path to fitness. But there's no justification for maintaining a steady pace when we're out there training. And in fact, it can be counterproductive, especially as you get tired at mile 4, mile 7, or mile 12. Your heart rate goes up and the fatigue goes up, but you're still, for some reason, trying to look at your watch and hold a 10-minute pace per mile or whatever you're doing. And so it's a way to fatigue the body, trash the hormones. We
Mhm.
also have a section talking about how endurance training does not really contribute to losing excess body fat, which is
Exactly.
probably the main goal of most people that are out there shuffling down the sidewalk thinking it's time to get in shape, like the 40-year-old that says, "Oh, I better do a marathon now because I just hit 40." And so
Yeah.
what it actually does is it dysregulates appetite and satiety hormones because the workouts are slightly too significantly too stressful. So
Mhm.
you eat more and you're lazier throughout the day because you set that alarm in the morning and went and slammed your 6 mile run, or perhaps it was a grueling cardio class at the gym, like a spin class where we're sprinting, quotes and quotes, sprinting for too long with too
Oh,
little
yes, the
rest and
classes.
just
Yeah.
draining yourself in the
Yeah.
manner of a poorly contemplated high intensity interval training session.
Yes, I think this is a good point to point out to our listeners is that you mentioned this in the book too, is that they are duped into thinking that these Orange Theory or like high intensity interval classes are actually high intensity interval work, and that's actually not the case because like how we people don't understand the formula of intensity versus rest periods. And
Mhm.
I guess like that would be more of a long distance or miler workout, miler 3,000 meter runner workout, the way these classes are structured, because they're giving a semi intense bout of energy and then very little rest. So these aren't actually high intensity interval training as you would, scientifically say, because they're not getting enough rest period in between the exercises. But they're asking the teachers are asking them to be demanding of their intensity, but they actually can't reach that 95% intensity that many times throughout the class. Um, right? So these classes, like you said, are not actually where the high intensity interval is, which is very beneficial for BDNF and all kinds of hormone health and things like that. So it's not truly high intensity.
Okay, so now look what we're doing. We're jogging or doing cardio at a slightly elevated pace for a long duration steady state, which has all kinds of negative health consequences and can be potentially beneficial only if you're super fit and exercising at the right heart rates, which most people are routinely exceeding that fat max heart rate. And then second, as you just described, we go to the gym and do the classes, and the mainstream fitness industry programming, by and large, is falling under this category of HIIT, HIIT, but it's done in a manner that's overly stressful, exhausting, making you lazier and eating more food as a consequence of your devoted fitness regimen. So
And
the
and
two
it's
most
kind of
popular
also,
things,
yeah,
what?
it's also raising the cortisol. I've had clients
Yeah,
that say,
yeah.
like, I don't understand. I'm exhausted when I leave
Mm,
these classes, and I feel like I should be burning more fat, and I'm not. Like, I'm actually holding fat in my stomach, and I'm
hmm
like, that's because it's increasing your cortisol, and that cortisol is lingering for too long, because of your exhaustion. Like, the point is not to be exhausted. Although, I do love a 400-meter workout that leaves me laying on the ground. on the occasion, but not 5 days a week. That
Yeah,
is
and
not
you've
good.
the preparation to build up to the point where you can push your body that hard is something that we can't ignore the importance of that. So for the average person, we should downscale that by a factor of 10 to 1 to
Mhm.
where, if you're doing 4 times 200 at 95% with 3-minute rest, they would do maybe 4 times 20. That's 10 times shorter than a
Yeah.
200. That might be perfect for most people who sit at a desk all day and don't
Mhm.
have functional glutes, hamstrings, hip flexors, and so forth. But there's always a place to start to rev that engine up a little bit and get all these hormonal and metabolic benefits without the downsides of doing too much. I think there's a psychological component where, life is getting easier and more comfortable. The people who are in the fitness realm are by and large not the hard laborers of society where they're digging a ditch for a new phone wire and then they're going to the gym at 5 p.m. I think those people are
Yeah.
going home and relaxing
Yeah.
for the most part. And so
So
the,
as we
the
move from a society back in, in the 1800s, 1700s, but, where as a population, we had to work really hard. I mean, even into the early 1900s, we see all of these laborers coming over from different countries into America. And they are, they're starving and working hard labor. And that is in our genetics still. Like we're
yeah.
not that many generations from it, but we're increasingly, I think, losing that in our genome. Um, and so, yes, they're substituting by creating these, hard work scenarios, but not in the way that's benefiting longevity. So, like
Hmm.
those people that we just talked about, those hard laborers, maybe from, that are building the railroads and that sort of thing, they're not living very long. So, to do that to the point of exhaustion every day, like, yes, we do have a more comfortable life, but I think as
We're
health,
still building the railroads instead of
yeah, instead
doing
of,
what,
right,
humans are
balance,
naturally meant to do. Yeah.
becoming strong, asking
Yeah.
what is the correct balance, for longevity and for optimal health. A lot of people ask me, about my metabolic practice, and they say like, well, sometimes, performing well doesn't mean they're healthy. And I say, well, with my clients, I don't care if they're Olympians or what, they could be going for the Olympic gold. And all I care about is what is their health markers first.
Mm.
Are they healthy? Are their hormones balanced? Are they sleeping well? Do they feel good energy throughout their day? These are the factors that, which everybody wants first. Now, when we fix those and they feel good, they have good sleep, they feel like great energy and motivated, all the things, then they tend to, of course, have a better athletic performance. Am I after the bottom line of the gold medal first? No. They know this when I work with them. I'm after how healthy are you? Let's
Mm.
make sure that you're able to have babies after your Olympic career is over. Like we don't want to mess up your hormones.
Mm.
It's telling you that you need sugar for fuel, and then you have PCOS and you can't have babies. Like, no. I actually worked with an Olympian once that I couldn't believe how lean and fit she was, but she was pre-diabetic because she was told for so many years by dietitians that she needed glucose for fuel. And you guys talk about this in your book that when you move away from these long endurance bouts, then your body's not craving that carbohydrate for fuel anymore. And that whole thing is a sham anyway. Love the Tim Noakes reference in the book. So yeah, I think the nutrition goes side by side with it, and having this balance is what it's all about. I think a lot of people need to know, Brad, about the heart health because it's one of your book mirrors my top 10 reasons for sprinting instead of
Mm.
endurance. And one of the things I talk about is heart health. So I remember, at one of these races that my friend put on here over in Maui, that this guy came to me. He said, "Oh, I used to run Masters track, but then I started running marathons, and then I had a heart attack." And I couldn't believe, how could I have a heart attack after all the miles that I was
Mm.
running? Like I thought I was fit. But what happens, I think people don't realize, is that you can exercise the heart too much. And I know it sounds crazy, but hypertrophy used to be something that the cardio enthusiasts would say, we want hypertrophy of the heart. But if you have too much hypertrophy of the heart, it interferes with how the heart functions. Can you talk about heart health and endurance training a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty simple to make an analogy to, let's say you did too many bicep curls and now your biceps are sore. And so what happened is scarring and inflammation of the muscle because you did too many sets, and the next day you wake up sore and inflamed, and it hurts. And the same thing can happen to the heart muscle, where you engage in repeated scarring and inflammation of the heart by doing these steady state workouts where you're pegging your heart rate, especially in like the non-impact extreme endurance sports. Like cyclists can ride their bicycle around the freaking island 212 miles, pegging their heart rate at 150 to 160 for 7 hours or something. The heart is not meant to operate in that manner. And so if you do this day after day and year after year, you can elevate this risk of an overstressed, chronically scarred and inflamed heart. And the thing that happens is it compromises the electrical signaling of the heart, especially the really sensitive right ventricle, which is thin and has all this electrical circuitry in it. And so then it starts to flip out, and you get arrhythmia. Atrial fibrillation is the most common one.
Mhm.
This is generally happening amongst the most extreme endurance performers, so it's not something everybody needs to go home and freak out about. But it is an example of, how bad it is to overdo something that we think we're doing in the name of health. And then hand in hand with that, as you mentioned earlier, is the rate of chronic overuse injuries among regular runners is around 50% per year, and 25% of runners are injured at any given time. So if you look at a sport and a movement where a quarter of the people are on the sidelines and the rest of them are about to get there, it's clear that there's a huge flaw in the approach. So I think, just to cap up some of the conversation we've had, if you just slow down and exercise at a comfortable pace, that's when you are doing a solid for your health, and also building up the energy and even the resiliency to a certain extent to be able to go and try what your dad did, and go from walking, jogging, and then finally sprinting up a hill, because you lead an active, energetic lifestyle. You lift some weights now and then, and you open up the throttle now and then. And
The
that's, yeah,
energy reserve, you're moving your blood, which is great, but you have that energy reserve to do that maximum effort occasionally, like
that
one,
too.
two,
And
three. Yeah.
guess who doesn't have the energy reserve? Are the people that out there putting 40, 50 miles a weekend, and just like I described as myself, I was so tired that I couldn't even lift a sandbag to help the old lady next door,
Mhm.
during the rainstorms, because the next morning I'd be as stiff in the lower back, because I was usually riding 84 miles and swimming for an hour and a half and running 4 to 8 or 12 miles every
Yeah.
single day. And so I was devoted to one thing at the expense of total body functional fitness and longevity. So anyone who's listening, watching, that's wanting to, like, quote, get in shape or age gracefully, that's when we have to open up the conversation and realize it's not about struggling and suffering and pushing your body to these extreme endurance feats that are so glorified today. And I talked a little bit about the
Yeah.
psychology and the personality, and
Mhm.
some of that's that, life gets easier and easier. So we think, oh, I better, lace up my shoes and shuffle down the road in the hot sun until I feel like heck, and then I can pat myself on the back and make a social media post. So there's a psychological component, and then there's a strategic component where, if you read the last 20 of your posts, we can start to change our mindset and realize, oh, it's not about how many hours or how many miles or how tired I am at the end of the high intensity interval workout at the gym. It's more about, taking care of the body, and actually living and training like an elite athlete.
Yes, and we do get to witness those real life superheroes all the time, you and I, Brad, because we go to Masters track meets and we see, people like Flo Myler or recently Kathy Bergen jumping the world record in the high jump.
Yeah.
That was amazing that you got to
Cynthia,
see that.
I filmed her jumping. I was sitting there waiting for
Yeah,
my high jump to start, and it was a cool little video. I put it on Instagram. It has
it's viral.
800,000 views,
Yeah.
like in 2 weeks,
Oh,
and
I
now
it shared
it's, yeah,
4 different times across my feed by various people.
it's
I'm like,
amazing.
that's Brad's video. So that, yeah, same thing for me when I posted Flo Myler pole vaulting, breaking the pole.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but we are around these real life superheroes. And guess what? They are not running miles and miles and miles per week. And I think that those people that have been doing that are missing from the Masters, 80-year-old group or 90-year-old group because it was too much for them to do over the years. And, they're not there, those endurance athletes, because they're burned out. So I mean, I think I do sometimes see like 90-year-old or 80-year-old marathoner or something like that. But I just feel like for most people, it's going to be too extreme, and it does have all those hormone consequences, lower, testosterone, all kinds of hormone imbalances, heart health. Better be DNF with sprinting versus endurance training. Their overuse injury. I mean, my top 10 list, says it all. We've already gone over that in your podcast. Um, but what about, okay, so in the wellness communities, which, oh man, there's some really cross information in the wellness communities. I feel like, for instance, again, a lot of people listen to Andrew Huberman for, his opinion, but he wrote the foreword to the book that just came out by Cameron Haynes, who just ran 250 miles on a broken foot. And I feel a little bit concerned about what is the message that we are telling. I mean, I love David Goggins for entertainment purposes. And sure, I do like to have a tough mindset to push through
Mm,
my sprint workout,
mm.
but I think there's a disconnect between mental strength and hurting yourself. And I don't feel like it's wise to run 250 miles on a broken foot. And I don't think, and then I also look at him and I look at, other people, his son and everything, doing all these amazing endurance feats. And I think, what also are they doing that the average person doesn't have access to? Stem cells,
Mm.
peptides. I don't know if they're doing growth hormone or any kind of performance enhancers. I don't know, but I'm just saying maybe that, because a lot of people do. Not us, because we're drug tested and we choose not to. We choose to be natural. But, all of these people doing these amazing feats on broken bodies and pushing the broken bodies, I feel like that there's a disconnect with the average person trying to be well, and that shouldn't be maybe crossed over, or there should be like a big disclaimer, like don't do this at home or something like that. I don't know. Like, what do
Yeah.
you? And if
Um, yeah, we gave David Goggins a hard time in the book, and I was pretty sensitive and strategic about it because he goes out of his way to say, "Don't try this at home. This is some crazy effed up shit, man, and I'm doing it because of this and that."
Mm.
And whatever we need to achieve personal growth, and some people that are coming from a really
But
dark, dark
he,
place,
I don't
like,
remember. I know he probably does say that, but his tagline is "Stay hard."
yeah,
So
yeah,
why not telling that?
it's a really flawed and disconcerting message to spit out there, and especially with social media, where we have the comparison culture by default. You're kind of these influencers are triggering your fears and insecurities, and so it's prompting you to do perhaps stupid shit yourself just to feel like you're worthy and you're a badass too. And I'd rather point the conversation to the elite athletes and the great champions of the world who take such good care of their bodies and their minds and are very patient and sensible with their training. Um, it's the exact contrast to the average person tortures their body more so than Kipchoge, the greatest marathoner of all time. We feature him in the book a lot. He runs 83% of his weekly mileage in zone one, not zone two, but
Yes,
zone one. But
exactly.
most people are out there advocating that you need to peg it right at the top of zone two. Otherwise, you're not getting the right workout. One
But also,
person,
they're not burning fat in zone two. Like you were saying earlier, that that's supposed to be the fat burning, but they're not burning fat. They're holding on to that fat due to that.
well, you know what? They're burning whatever calories they're burning.
Yeah.
And with that chronic overproduction of cortisol, they are prompting the body to not just add fat, but add visceral fat, the health destructive fat that goes around the abdomen due
Yeah.
to an overly stressful lifestyle. We didn't
Mhm.
mention this before, but like all your training and all your fitness endeavors have to factor in to the same equation as all the other forms of stress in your life. So if you're baking treats for 12 hours for the cafe, that counts as part of your allocation of energy resources versus sitting on your butt and waiting around for your workout to start at 4 p.m., which is probably not your choice either. But we all have to have this sensible big picture idea of like, what is the best allocation of resources for the body when it comes to fitness? You've taught me this, Cynthia, that right now, since I'm not an endurance freak anymore, my best allocation of resources is to take 3 days a week and not do much of anything of note because I need to rest my tendons, my body, my hormones from something that is really making a wonderful fitness impact the previous day, such as a high intensity track workout or a strength training session or what have you.
Yes, I'm actually really proud of you, Brad, for doing that. And for those listeners that don't know, I've been coaching and helping Brad with his training for the past year or so, at least, maybe even longer. But and it's taken because of that endurance mindset, like it's even taken you where I have to be very clear, like, hey, like all of that bike riding to your workout counts as energy expenditure. Like that's not recovery or that sort of thing. Like I have to be really clear because the endurance mindset of what is recovery is different than the sprint mindset. Like, endurance athletes think that a 20-mile run sometimes is recovery because they're going a slower pace. So no, I'm saying like when you exercise intensely, recovery means recovery. Like you don't do anything. You just rest and you supply your body with the nutrients it needs to heal. Because if you keep stretching those muscles and tearing them and not giving them time to heal, they're going to be damaged and injured over time, which I guess is also the point with the heart health. That's really I loved how you put that. So yeah, oh my gosh, we've covered so much. I feel like I hope everybody understands the toolbox here is very accessible. It's, walking, yes. And, I think walking in the minimalist shoe, I'm a big fan of the Palooza, which you're part of. And I think that, I don't think sprinting in that for the novice is a good idea, but unless it's on the beach where it's,
Mm.
forgiving in the sand, I think sprinting in the Paloozas on the sand is a great idea or barefoot. But like for instance, at my beach, the sand is volcanic glass, so it tends to be rough on the feet if I don't wear something. So it's a godsend to have the palouvas. But yeah, barefoot, strengthening the feet, not overly cushioned shoes for long periods of time. I think for some short sprint intervals, some cushioning you need, especially as a novice because of the impact. But yeah, like the walking, the strength training 3 times a week at least, and the intensely sprinting or plyometrics, right? Too to keep that explosiveness, which is a little bit higher level, I think, for a novice, but
Yeah.
is much better than in the endurance training. And I love this book so much. Is there any other like wrap up thoughts you'd like to give or
Yeah,
talk
you're right. We covered a lot. I really
about?
encourage people to make it simple and doable for themselves. And I talk to real people, like friends of mine who, have aspirations to get fitter. And you can see all the intimidation and confusion as you discuss, same with diet. Like, how do I eat healthier? Well, follow this person, follow that person, and it gets into a war of words and all that. So
Mhm.
if we can just take like baby steps forward. And a lot of times when I'm guests on podcasts, they ask me for like pick one thing, and I'm like, why don't you start sprinting a little bit, like up a staircase in your home or at work for 1 or 2 flights, and just make these tiny little incremental changes. Of course, you're doing something, but you're also changing your mindset to realize that it's not about suffering and steady state, grueling workouts and
Oh,
all the
it's
stuff that
empowering, isn't it, to
it,
sprint? It
oh,
feels so empowering.
it's so much more fun too. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wonderful. And the other thing is, it doesn't take that much time. So, like, to get on the Cynthia plan and see all these, your clips of your workouts. Those workouts are over in 7 minutes or whatever. It's not like you're in the gym for 2 hours. I mean, sometimes you are because you're at an elite level performer, but like you
I
can get
know
really fit
of
in a
my
really short time.
you know of my mentor Charles, of course, and he had all of these fun sayings. He used to say, like no one ever got mugged by a box of donuts. That was one of my favorite. Um, and so, of course, meaning it's always your choice, right? And so, one of the things he used to say is, if you're in the gym longer than 45 minutes, you're making friends, not progress.
Hmm.
So, my gym workouts are usually around. I mean, obviously, I speed them up for my clips and that sort of thing, but I use a slow eccentric tempo, which I think another podcast another day. But people don't realize that when you lift slow, it makes you fast. It recruits
Hmm.
many more muscle fibers, and the slow eccentric, like a 4 second squat down or something like that, or like you see me do like say my power raises or my other shoulder work, like, power raises is this one.
Uh-huh.
Um, my external rotation is what I'm getting at. I'm controlling the movement. I speed it up for my clips, but I'm controlling movement down, 2, 3. Sometimes the bench has an isometric hold at the bottom. All of these slow eccentrics are recruiting more muscle fibers, which in
Hmm.
turn make you faster, including the type 2 fast twitch. So, yeah, so but even with that formula of the slow eccentric, I'm getting quality work in. And Charles was the king of creating formulas for supersets where you're able to hit two different muscle groups, back to back. You still have a rest period. But another time we'll have to talk about that formula. But yeah, it's people don't realize that you don't need to be in the gym for 2 hours. Like, you don't need to do it. And also, I think there's a difference between the bodybuilders and and the strength athletes. And I find that the most health benefits come from those who are strength training for strength as they
Hmm.
get older. So my dad, I kept him in the strength endurance rep zone, which is usually, it's a whole formula again, time under tension, 4 to 6 reps usually, 8 to 10 on the smaller muscle groups. But um, not the hypertrophy ones. So you see bodybuilders, and you see all these people out there saying eat lots of protein and build lots of muscle for longevity. But I think, like the endurance training, there's a cusp where you're carrying around too much muscle, and that is also a detriment. So yes, the strength training, but not hypertrophy, which is bodybuilding type strength training.
Right.
Um,
Longer duration, more exhausting workouts. I think it's a
yeah,
good tip to
yeah,
stay
I'm sorry.
away
My
from.
point is that the bodybuilders tend to be in the gym for hours.
Yeah, yeah. Stay away from things that are exhausting in the fitness realm because if you talk to people who have fallen off and aren't in the fitness game anymore, it's usually because some trainer worked the crap out of them or they were deeply immersed into running community where they pushed and then de developed all these injuries or just got burnt out. And so fitness can be easier, more fun, less time consuming.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the awakening that we're promoting as hard as possible. And it's been, like I mentioned, a great awakening for me because right now at age 60, I feel way fitter, stronger, more powerful, more resilient than I did when I was half this age. I can't go as fast on swim, bike, run anymore, and I don't care or have any desire to. But it
Oh,
is a beautiful awakening to think that, your heyday is not over when your college career ends as a baseball pitcher because you hurt your elbow and then the rest of your life you're watching sports on TV. It doesn't have to be that way at all.
exactly. And again, I think feeling empowered in your exercise program and life, right? You want to feel empowered and not fatigued. So, you got to ask yourself, is your training making you feel empowered, or is it making you tired and you're just trying to warrior through it, like, you know, running 200
Warrior through
miles?
it. No,
Uh,
thank you. Also, I think you should talk about the physique aspects and the great success you've had with your clients, as well as yourself. If you're watching on YouTube, you're injured, you're about to have surgery, but you're still Rip City, and it's because of the genetic signaling that you've been sending for many, many years. And I think people they're not properly grasping how sprinting and explosive training affects the body
it's a total
even
work.
though it doesn't burn that many calories.
Right, because it burns calories. EPOC, you talked about that in your book too. Burns calories long afterwards. I know we just keep talking and talking, but and I don't want to hold you up if you need to go to your next appointment. But I think this is important, you know. So this EPOC where the sprinting burns fat because of the muscle tissue and all this stuff long after you're done sprinting, as opposed to so there's like a I don't put all of my eggs in the basket of research studies, but there are some good ones out there. There are some really terrible ones out there. And I think there's no research out there for things that you and I already know. That's one of my pet peeves is when people say, show me the research for blah, blah, blah. And you and I, Brad, know that we've already seen the research in real life. That's one of my pet peeves. Don't be so naive. These influencers are so naive to say, I challenge you to show me the research for
Yeah,
both.
the
I
research is Sandy Morris going over 15 feet in the pole vault, and I don't care what
exactly.
any
Yeah.
researcher or influencer has to say. I just saw her clear the bar. So what more proof do you need? That's more important than that. There is nothing.
Yeah, she's actually one of the, I think, three women in history to go over 5 meters. But or Flo Myler, me asking Flo Myler, 90 years old, who's doing a decathlon in the 98-degree heat, 7 hours day one, 7 hours day two, breaking world records. Me asking her, Flo Myler, what do you eat before you compete?
Mm.
Oh, I eat steak. You know, I love a petite filet before I compete.
Mm.
Flo, where are you going? Are you celebrating for dinner tonight? Oh, well, my kids want to take me for pasta, but I don't want pasta. I want prime rib. You know, there you go. Like that's some data for me. That's real life data. Do
Hmm.
I need 10 more 90-year-olds? No, because there are not 10 more 90-year-olds doing that for
That's
a
right.
case study. So don't even get me started. But there is research showing all of the things that we talked about. There are a lot of studies to back up what we've talked about with hormone and heart health and things like that out there in case somebody needs some sort of receipts. But we already know from real life, and we just, you and I do this because we have a passion to help others thrive. Our businesses aside, I think that we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have that passion to help others. And I feel that from you, and I definitely have that passion. And we just want everybody to feel as good as we feel, right? So who doesn't want to feel like us? I always say your superhero warrior self. And that type of warrior, and what you're talking about with me working out, even though my leg is injured, this is a different type of warrior mentality than pushing through a broken foot. I'm not hurting myself. I'm
Right.
empowering myself. I'm not pushing my knee to be more broken. My knee is
Mm.
fine. It's in the brace. And listen, it took me a few weeks to get up to that. I did a little bit each day. But what I'm focusing is on what can I do that's empowering for myself as opposed to breaking my knee further to prove some points, and everyone keeps saying, oh, like you'll be back and healed and back on the track in no time. And you know what I tell them? I'm fine. It's going to take as long as it takes.
Hmm.
I don't really care to return to competition right away. I've accomplished so much in competition, going from being 400-meter world champion to, pentathlon, only 24 months to go from starting my first ever pentathlon and learning all of those new events to being a
Mm.
silver medalist. And by the way, Rachel, who is the gold medalist, is my friend. She actually ended up having a knee injury too after the meet,
Oof.
but she was 1 week away from the 50 age group. So if she had been born a week earlier, I would have been world champion in that too. But she's amazing. So yeah, kudos to her for doing so well in all those events over the years. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that I've accomplished so much, and I'm not in a hurry to prove myself to anyone by doing something that's going to further hurt myself. And I think that we need to check those wellness influencers or those people with that mindset, like grind, grind, grind. Yeah, there's a point, where you do have to strengthen yourself to empower yourself, but not grind so much that you're hurting yourself. So I think when you're watching those influencers, what are they doing? Are they hurting themselves or are they empowering themselves? I think that's my bottom line
That's
to be a
great.
warrior.
a nice closer there and delivered with nice politeness. I'm feeling like being more aggressive on some of these messages, which are really have the potential to be destructive. And I just called out Michael Phelps on he put a little clip up that said, I trained every day. I didn't miss a single day for 6 years, 4 workouts a day. And I'm like, no, bullshit. You did not.
That's
And
BS.
don't tell people that.
Yeah.
I know you're the greatest of all time. You don't have to brag or embellish. Kobe Bryant used to do the same thing. I found out my competition's waking up at 6 a.m., so I started waking up at 4 a.m. to train. All right, maybe you did that a couple times, but like it sends a bad message to the average person where we're trying to focus on do what works for you and take little
Mhm.
baby steps forward and forget all the blather and the bragging because it does have a destructive effect, especially when it's from, a great champion who we're looking to for guidance. It's
Yes.
okay to miss a day. It's okay to miss a frickin' season for Cynthia right now as you take care of your body and give your
Yes.
body, take what your body gives you every day.
2 seasons, 5 years, who knows? Like I do, I guess my identity is not wrapped up in, in just doing that. I do art. I do so many things. I'm a muralist, and people who know
Did
me
you
know.
do that lion behind you on that we're watching? Did
Yep.
you do that? Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yep.
Wow.
My lion. And this is one is a Balinese dancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep, she's showing some videos, people. Watch on YouTube.
But yeah, so I mean, I do so many things that, my identity is not tied to just being, 400-meter world champion or pentat, whatever. I do post me working out, with my leg injury, that sort of thing, again, because I think it's empowering for other people to see that
Hmm.
it's good to be positive through injury and focus on what you can do. Does it mean that I don't have lows? No, I talk about that too sometimes. Like, hey, it's still frustrating that I can't get up and walk across the room. I get
Mm.
frustrated. But I'm not into, uh, forcing an image on people that they should be destructive. And when people ask me like, hey, how do you still have abs? You've been sitting on the couch for weeks. And I go, hey, you know what? It is partly that I have trained so well with my strength and explosiveness and that sort of thing before, but also I actually really made sure that I ate very clean right off the bat as soon as I got injured. I only ate chicken soup for like a few days, but a lot of it, don't get me wrong, but because I knew that glycine was going to really help me heal. Because so knowing what I know that if I cheat a little bit and eat like my husband's restaurant makes a fantastic gluten-free pizza, but man, the salt and the cheese is no good for my knee.
Mm.
So might have a little bite, but really I'm sticking to, the fresh local fish with green vegetables. I eat nuts. I eat steak, of course. So I have been very strict, and I really think that it's not a discipline thing; it's a choice.
Mm.
Charles used to say that discipline is a myth. It's called. One of his most plagiarized articles. He would always say is the myth of discipline, and he would say it's not actually discipline; it's just a choice.
Mm.
And so my choice is that I want to give my knee the best opportunity to heal, because that's going to make me less frustrated in the long run and more empowered. So yeah, I guess unknowingly, my theme today is make choices that are going to empower you, not hurt you.
Love it.
All right.
Cynthia Montileone. Everybody check her out on Instagram, Fast Over 40.
Yes, and check out Brad because I'm interviewing you today.
I'm going to share this with my listeners too, if you
Oh,
allow me, because this is a
absolutely,
great conversation
absolutely.
with so much info. So,
Well, we're interviewing each other in a
yeah.
way, but I am just so thankful for you, Brad, again, that you and Mark wrote this book. Because I'm always preaching this, and I love the detail that you guys went into. I love all the examples. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm excited for our listeners to be inspired and, tackle being empowered in their day. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Visit borntowalkbook.com. We have great PDF downloads, free resources you can get that support the content in the book. You can order the book. I'm at bradkearns.com and the BRAD podcast. If you want to check out the podcast, you can start with Cynthia's interview, a great show, and love to connect with your audience too. So
Yes,
keep it
awesome.
up.
Okay, aloha, Brad. Thank you.
Aloha, mahalo.